Good day, people. This is Catalin Rata, your host and facilitator into The Aftermath, a podcast where we uncover patterns and reverse engineer the future so you can spot opportunities and threats before everyone else does. We continue the Prices in the AI Era series. I'm joined by Manu Martonca, founder of SoftFight and architect of the Just Value framework. Welcome back, Manu. Great to have you here.
Hi, Catalin. Good to see you again.
Cool. So far, we've established two critical patterns. First, that AI amplifies whatever pricing philosophy you bring to it, good or bad. Second, discovery becomes your competitive advantage because that's where human relationships create value AI cannot replicate. However, AI can help enhance it. But here's what both patterns reveal. Software companies price what they deliver. Hours, features, outputs. Meanwhile, customers are paying for something completely different. They're paying for the total cost of getting to their outcome. Risk, integration, effort, organizational change, maybe opportunity cost. So today's question is, can AI price what it cannot see? Let's find out. Mano, I will dive directly into the first question and tell us if what are customers actually paying for beyond the price? What's this total cost concept?
There is a very negative image of value-based pricing, and the idea that you should charge for the value for the customer, how much it's worth for them, how much money they're making for it. And there is this negative image, especially in the B2B software industry, because it feels unfair. It's okay, if I work with 3 different customers, I have 3 different teams, but they work the same amount of hours and they work with the same technology, the price should be the same. And this is a typical cost-based view of pricing, which for many people has a moral connotation and an ethical connotation. If I charge for costs, then I'm fair. The total cost of ownership is the next logical step when you want to look beyond the costs you have to deliver. Because lots of times, if you try to optimize the cost and you try to be as efficient as you can for your customer to maintain a spirit of fairness, and you might end up hurting the customer.
Okay.
Let's take a very simple example. You have a team of 5 engineers and they work very well together. And they feel like we don't really need a project manager. Like, we can organize ourselves. We know what to do. Just give us the specifications and we'll work together and we'll deliver this project. From the vendor perspective, it might feel like that's a win because you don't have to charge for project management on top. You don't have the costs. You don't have the overheads. For a not so sophisticated client, it might also feel like a win. Yeah, I don't have to pay for this. We all know how that works. And 3 months later or 6 months later, you realize that, oh, wait, maybe we should have had a project manager in the mix. And it might have been a much better idea to actually charge for this and pay for it as a client, because the end result would have been much better. And we can take this line of thinking very, very far. Testing, DevOps, product management, design, business analysis, domain expertise, industry knowledge, regulatory knowledge, knowing what the industry you're working for needs to do in terms of compliance and regulation. And so on. All this, the more you know as a vendor, the better, the more expertise you have as a vendor in all aspects that are relevant to your customer, the more efficient you'll be. The less you do this, the more extra costs you impose on your customer. And most of the time, they're not even visible. If you try to be efficient and you don't have a product manager in your team, but the project you're working on really needs a good product manager to do the roadmap, to create a strategy, to think of everything in advance, and to connect it to other, let's say, stakeholders or platforms they're working with. If you don't have it in your team, then the customer needs to have it on their side. If we simplify it to the max, and it's a very straightforward relationship where the customer has the specifications, sends you the specifications, and you have to deliver the software, it's extremely inefficient to have the product manager full-time on the customer side and the team separately, regardless of whether you are in the same city, or it will be very inefficient. Most of the time, they cannot afford the full-time product manager because they don't need them for other projects. And just for this project is too much overhead. And it might be more expensive to have them in their team than in your team, and so on. So you multiply this effect by many different dimensions. And we realize that actually the price that you put in the contract is nowhere near the total cost for the customer. And typically any agreement, any project like that you can define on the customer side has a much bigger financial outlay, a much bigger total cost. Most software vendors miss that. And they only think in terms of how much do I put in the proposal, how much do I estimate in terms of effort, apply the rates, whether it's hourly, monthly, retainers, doesn't matter. You get a total budget, and and then most people even make the mistake of confusing price and budget and cost and investment, and there's no clear definition there, and everyone uses a different term and word and understanding of it, and that's where you get a lot of issues. Yeah, because if you think in terms of total cost of ownership, then for every solution you consider to present to a customer, you also take into account the total cost for them. You make it visible, and you show them, oh yes, this option looks more expensive, but because you save so many other costs on the other side, you actually are better off. Or the other way around. This is very cheap now, but if you do this like this, next year it will cost you a lot more in maintenance and support and rework and so on. And if you don't do, if the vendor and the team delivering the solution doesn't do this, most of the time the customer doesn't have the expertise and the capacity to do it.
As you were talking about fairness and the whole process of how you highlight those hidden costs, it began to become even more clearer to me on why you chose the name for your framework, the Just Value framework. And I wanted to tap into that a little bit and ask you how does this framework help teams think about total customer cost rather than just their own pricing?
That's exactly the key here, is that many people see the buyer-vendor relationship in terms of a commercial transaction with limited resources, a limited profit, meaning that it's a win-lose situation. Like if I charge for more, the customer will have to pay more, so they lose. If I charge for less, they will win, they will choose me. So the default mode for many people is win-lose. When you have services, when you have a party, whether it's a large company, a startup, a government, doesn't matter, that needs technology, and you have teams that have the capability and the skills to develop that solution, most of the time that will create value. The natural aspect of creating technology, solving a problem with software, will create more value than the actual cost of that project, because it will have a direct impact in a business or a government or an organization, NGO. And that impact can be measured in very simple terms. It either increases revenues, or it reduces costs, or it manages risks. Each of these can be quantified, and you can put a monetary value on. And if you think about it like this, then the ethical dimension of it and the just part of the Just Value framework name, it's exactly about that. It's recognizing that the better the solution you create and the better the outcomes you can deliver to your customer, it will be better for both parties, for all three parties, in fact, because I always, and I've seen this from the inside for many years, and I think that's a critical aspect, which is that you have the parties involved are the buyer, the vendor, and the people in the team. We're talking about services here. Yeah. You cannot deliver services without people.
Yeah.
And even with AI accelerating, AI replacing, AI enhancing, AI augmenting people, you still have people in there. Yeah. And many commercial structures in the IT industry currently have big downsides for the teams. Yeah. When you charge for hours and you try to be as efficient as possible, you don't leave time for learning, you don't leave time for rework, you don't. There's a lot of frustration there, which will only make it worse in the long run and sometimes even in the short term. And that's why, somewhat counterintuitively,
Hmm.
the better pricing models, the optimal pricing model usually are more fair to all parties involved, because one of the basic principles there is to align incentives, is to choose a billing metric which is as close as possible in meaning as the usage metric, which has an impact on the team and how it's measured and reported and controlled. And it has it's as aligned as possible with the value metric, which is important for the customer. If you can get the billing metric, the usage metric, and the value metric completely aligned, that's the optimal pricing model, and everybody will be happy. And there are no misunderstandings, no misalignments, no room for disappointment down the line.
Right. Okay.
That's the optimal pricing model. Whatever that is, whether it's hours, projects, productized services, monthly retainers, it doesn't matter. As long as you have this alignment and everybody has aligned incentives, then everything else becomes much easier to manage, better, and it will lead to better outcomes. If you have misalignment and you have different billing metric than to the value metric for the customer, or don't even talk about it, that's where you create room for trouble.
Cool. That makes total sense. And now that you got into all those details, I feel like this is more of a shared language across disciplines that gets everyone on the same page in terms of expectations, right? So you don't get into any conflict or any disappointments as long as all the expectations are aligned.
Yeah, and that can happen for a 2-week project, for a 2 months project, for a 2-year project. It doesn't matter. You have the same structural problems with the same structural solutions.
Cool. Thanks for that. I would like to turn up the heat a little bit by challenging you with a scenario, right? Imagine a customer evaluating 3 proposals in 2028, right? 3 years from them starting doing all these algorithms, maybe putting AI into the process. All of them have optimal prices according to their algorithms, right? Internal algorithms. But the total costs to the customer are vastly different. Walk me through what each algorithm is missing in this scenario.
I think here the main issue is that too many times we look at the effort and not the outcomes.
Hmm.
If you look at the effort, you don't care about the industry of the customer, you don't care about the domain of the customer, you don't care about what how that organization will use the solution after you finish the project and you deliver what you agree to. And if you only look at the efforts, whatever the algorithm that you use and however you do the calculation, you cannot fix it, because that becomes a structural element, and it's something that will no LLM will come into an existing process, whether you want to generate proposals, whether you want to review documents that you receive from the buyer, or to validate some internal compliance checks. If you didn't put total cost of ownership, economic value, if you didn't put this as separate stages and create a structure and a standardization around this process, you cannot fix it. Yeah. That's why you have to do it completely different from scratch. You have to make sure that this is embedded, because by default, technical, engineering, delivery people, however senior or experienced they are, they will not think about it. This is not in their nature. Yeah. They don't think that it's their responsibility to think about the total cost for the customer. They think they are there to find the best technical solution to as a complex problem as possible. Yeah, that's where they get their satisfaction, and that's how they feel they are growing as a professional. Yeah. Give me bigger and bigger problems, and I will find the optimal technical solution for each of them, and I will use my experience and my expertise to do that. If
Yeah.
you bring me the same complexity of a problem and tell me that this is worth much more to each new customer, there's no satisfaction in that. If you take a team that developed, I don't know, let's say a knowledge-based system and the first time they did it, it was for a school, which cannot afford to pay a lot for it. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a simple project. It took 1 year. They did. Second year, they get a university from the US that has more money, and it's a private university, and they can pay for it. But essentially, it's the same conceptual problem. Yeah. So they take all the learnings from the previous project, they apply them, they get some satisfaction, and they see a challenge there. But if the third year you come and say, we have the same conceptual problem, but this time it's a pharma company, they want to build this knowledge base internally for their employees who are scientists and researchers and very high paid people, and their time is worth a lot more, and the solutions that they bring is worth a lot more to the company. So we should do the exact same technical solution, but we charge 5 times more for it. They
Yeah.
will not see that as a win. Yeah. And when you multiply this across all projects, all technologies, all teams, you realize that if you don't do this on purpose, if you don't take into account the economic value and the total cost of ownership in the pricing algorithm and in the pricing steps, I'm willing to venture and say that most technical people will not care about this. They will not have any problem if there is an autonomous step in the process that takes this into account, calculates the price, and says to them, give me your effort of estimation, I will apply the rates, this is the budget. And they don't care that you increase that price because of economic value, total cost of ownership, and that you include it in the proposal, or you suggested them to put 3 paragraphs in that would justify to the customer why you did that, as long as they are happy with the technical solution.
Yeah, I think that sounds, a bit of a controversial approach to pricing, basically. If you think about it, most of these pricing experts or people that are creating these offers are mainly optimizing for vendor profitability, right, and not necessarily on customer outcome. That's their primarily concern, as like you said, it's what they bring satisfaction to their jobs.
Yeah, but that's exactly the point, because when you have to price one-time projects and you have custom negotiations and custom requests from clients, you can, when you set the price and you create the structure, the commercial structure for the entire proposal, you can go wrong in 2 ways. You can either set the price too high, and then you lose the project
Mm-hmm.
because we're not competitive and someone else takes it. Or you can set the price too low, you win the project, and then you can't deliver in a cost-effective manner because you didn't take something into account when you set the price, and you only realize it later, and the delivery team has to manage that. In this case, the optimal price, in the second scenario, even if it feels like the buyer, the client won initially because they paid a lower price, in the end they might lose even more because the project will not be ready on time, or it will be delivered with quality issues and so on, or it will be a toxic relationship. That happens a lot. Yeah, we all know that. The optimal price in this case is the price that takes into account the buyer's perspective and the vendor's perspective fully, doesn't leave any room for misalignment, misunderstandings, for things that were not taken into account, fully takes stock of all the risks that are involved. The risks are exposed, they are acknowledged, they are accepted by each party proportionally, and then you set the price. And this is the optimal price for the vendor because it ensures the set profitability that they need, otherwise they will not do the project.
Mm-hmm.
But it also ensures that the customer, it maximizes the chances that the customer will receive what they are expecting. Anything else short of this will be a disappointment for either party, most of the time for both.
Right. That makes total sense, and I think that brings some clarity to the whole win-win aspect of a negotiation. I would like us to bring in the AI layer into conversation and see how could AI optimize for the wrong variable in this in these scenarios we just talked about.
If we go back to the previous point of the total cost of ownership, this is where AI can help out, because now most of the outcomes are a function of the skills of the team involved. Yeah. And we all know that depending on who you involve and who you send this to, each proposal, each new customer, each new project request, the outcome will change. And the chances of the organization winning that project will change depending on who's involved. AI can equalize these chances, can level the probability of getting the project or not, because it can account for the missing skills or the missing habits from each team and from each person involved. And that's why if the driver of the conversation internally is the delivery team, the AI forces the economic value aspect, and it brings in more of the commercial part that is not usually used enough or thought through enough.
Mm-hmm.
If you have sales, more commercial people driving the conversation initially, AI can help with the technical aspects, and it can bring in more structure and make sure that. Let's take a very simple example.
Yep, please.
If you have a CTO that is working on the buyer side, and you have a first meeting between the CTO and a salesperson with no technical background and experience, you should have a lot of questions from the buyer that are answered with, I do not know, I have to talk to my colleagues and get back to you. Now, that should
Yeah.
be the objective solution. Yeah? We all know that it's not happening. Yeah, very few people have the confidence to say, I don't know, I'll get back to you. So what happens is that many technical questions and topics will be not understood properly by the vendor. There will not be enough trust created because the CTO will ask questions, and depending on their level of expertise and experience, they will see that it's not really connecting. So you might lose that opportunity on the spot, or
over promise. Sometimes you get out
or
of over.
promise, or not see the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't have the technical expertise to see that, oh wait, this is a project we already did 2 years ago, but now we could do it even better, and work with some technologies that our teams want to test, but we haven't had the chance yet. There are so many ways that this can go wrong. If you use AI in this particular instance to do the preparation, to do the standardized approach, you can uncover all these and compensate for them. You can send questions in advance to the buyer to show that you understand the opportunity, or to uncover that opportunity. You can flag that, oh wait, you have a mismatch, a disparity in terms of technical expertise between the buyer and the vendor. Make sure that in this meeting you also bring the technical part.
Yeah.
There are so many ways you can solve this, but if you leave it to people, as we have done so far, it will not be solved.
Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And again, it brings to AI, bringing that balance to the table and optimizing for the gaps that we generally see throughout the process. Can you talk a little bit about the hidden costs that are part of all this of all these processes, and how AI can help manage that as part of an extensive team with humans involved as well?
The tragedy here is that these costs are hidden, meaning that we don't take them into account. Yeah, and the most obvious to any pricing specialist is discounts. Yeah. There is no row in the financial report at the end of the year which says revenues lost to discounts, 1 million euros or 5 million euros or 10 million. If that would be there, we would have much different conversations and discount structures and approval systems and so on. Yeah. And there are many costs like this which we don't see. Yeah. Does anyone try to calculate and put in a report revenues lost because we charged €1 per hour too much and we lost the project with €1? If we would have asked for €1 less, we would still have been profitable. We could have done the project and we would have won. Does anyone estimate the mirror image to that? Yeah. Money we lost, revenues we lost because we undercharged by €1 per hour. We won the project, but then we couldn't really deliver. If we would have charged €1 more per hour for the entire project of 2 years with 20 people, we would have been fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Margins would have been okay. Everybody happy. Yeah. All these hidden costs are hidden because it's a complex system with lots of moving parts. Nobody has the complete view on everything to be able to uncover them, to prepare for them, to look for these numbers. And the end result is, what we call the misalignment tax. Yeah. The money you lose, the money you pay because you didn't properly align internally between delivery, engineering, sales, legal, and finance. And that's the simplest way to look at it. Yeah, and obviously it's even more complex than that.
Makes sense. And I think that's a great segue into our question of the episode is, with all of the things you just went through, can AI price what it cannot see?
Yes. In a deterministic world, you have to set intervals and steps in those intervals. Now, if you want to do a price calculation, if you want to ask for some information from the users to use it in the price calculation, you have to define the minimum, the maximum, the steps in between, what happens at each step. And you have to create a structure that is usable for users. The advantage of AI is that you can define the steps, you create a structure, you create some guardrails, but any missing data in between can be inferred and can be documented as a result of a probabilistic step without the fear that it will go wrong. Because you can create a very clear, stable, scalable structure with boundaries that you control, meaning that even if that probabilistic step is wrong, it will be wrong within a narrow interval that you control. And it's a small step between several bigger steps. And you have a much better chance of actually getting to a optimal outcome, because this means that you can take into account situations and cases that you haven't prepared for.
Okay.
Which you cannot do in a deterministic world. Yeah? In a deterministic world, you have to think through in advance of all the scenarios and all the combinations, and then say, if this, then. Now with Gen AI in this context, I'm only talking about setting prices for IT and software services. I'm not pretending this is bigger than that. But in this context, this is the big advantage of AI, is that you can fill in all these gaps in the skills of the team. You can fill in all these gaps in the understanding of the vendor about the buyer's context and situation. And you can fill in all the gaps in communication between the parties, either to uncover them and to say, here on this topic, you did not agree. Before you actually send the proposal, it's better to have another conversation with the client. Or you can say, we don't have this specifically described in the RFP, but based on everything they said so far, this topic should be like this. Let's move on. You don't need to go back to the customer.
Okay. How about companies that are already on that path and they start implementing AI and optimizing this process? What are the early signals that we could see from the outside that they are moving towards that process? How does it look on the outside?
I would say that the breadth of topics is a clear sign. Like if you are a buyer and you talk to multiple vendors of software IT services, and from one of these vendors you get lots of different questions on different levels of complexity, on different dimensions, technical, economic, legal, in a quick sequence and properly documented and properly thought through, and without going back to rehash the same topics. It's not like you get a survey with 30 questions and they ask you, please fill in this so that we can give you a proposal. Yeah, it's not like that. It's okay. Tell us, like the ideal scenario is the one where I, as a buyer, send a request. It can be 2 lines in an email. It can be 3 paragraphs. It can be a RFP with 50 pages. Doesn't matter. I say, I have this project. Do you have the capacity and the capability to deliver? And the answer I get back is, okay, so what we understand from you is this, this, and this. We have some questions. And you get some questions. And then you answer those questions, and then you get back some other questions. But there is no repeat. It's clear that they understood the context so far, and they just want to make sure that they understand it even better. And ideally, those questions are actually things that you haven't really thought through or thought about. That's a good sign. Yeah, that's when you know that they are looking at all the topics on different levels of complexity. They are trying to understand the situation and the project as well as possible to give you the technical solution and the price that is that optimal, which is the fair, the just leveling between the buyer and the vendor. And from the other side as well. Yeah, if you're a vendor and you get the request and then you see that from the buyer you get proper questions and answers, that's a good sign that AI is used correct. If not, then trouble will follow suit.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for putting that pattern together so clearly. It sounds like a bright future when we're gonna start to see that pattern. And again, thank you for all the insights you've been sharing today. And the concept of total customer cost versus price is such a fundamental shift in how to think about pricing. So again, thank you for breaking down so clearly on what's the current process and what AI can and cannot see. To everyone listening, if you're optimizing your price while ignoring risk, integration costs, organizational change, all of the hidden costs, you're optimizing for the wrong variable. Your customers see and feel the full cost, so you need to see it too. But here's an interesting pattern. Some companies are better positioned to handle this than others. So on our next episode, we answer the following question. Can generalists survive AI pricing? So keep close, and until then, keep building your future. My name is Catalin Rata, and we'll see you in the aftermath. Thank you, Manu, again.